broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round. And you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. You, the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. We have each other, and for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, I like the waves. We'll rise up, in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
Se hai paura, piangerai, e dentro gli occhi tuoi la nebbia vedrai. Io correrò e li asciugherò. Il sole
My name is Sora Trumika Scroggins, and I am a member of the significant South Atlantic region. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's episode of For the Record, where we are going to focus on and honor our caregivers. The lineup for tonight's show is going to be amazing, and I hope that you all are excited to see what we have in store for you. I would like to introduce you all to our host tonight, Carolyn G. Randolph, our regional director. She leads with love, serves significantly, and exemplifies excellence. Madam Regional Director, please take it away.
Thank you so very much, Sharmika. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this month. Across America, November is recognized as National Caregiver Appreciation Month, a month-long tribute to recognize those individuals who provide caregiving support to a family member or loved one. On November 19th, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated celebrated our Care for the Caregivers Impact Day. We salute all caregivers. Lives are changed when you take on the responsibility of providing care and comfort for a loved one. It requires you to reassess your personal life and professional career. There are new priorities and less time for self. On tonight's broadcast, we are excited to share some inspirational stories from caregivers within the South Atlantic region. For the record, I would like to take this time to welcome Mrs. Laurice Thomas for joining with us today. Laurice is a member of Delta Kappa Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Tallahassee, Florida. Thank you so much, Laurice, for taking some time to just share in this special month of Care for Caregivers with us.
Thank you for having me and inviting me to participate in such a wonderful event.
So I'm going to just ask you a brief question and you can answer it in your own way. I know some of your story, probably will never know all of your story, but I do know that, there was a transition from you becoming just a wife and a mother to also adding caregiver to your spouse as part of your responsibilities. So if you would share with us briefly, how did that happen? And, what were some of the dramatic changes that happened as well?
Well, I mean, there's so many changes and, you could just never be prepared. I actually was out of town traveling at my goddaughter's wedding on May 7th, 2017. I'll never forget that date because my husband called me and he says, I was in the back feeding the dog and I've fallen and I can't get up. And my daughters and I were like, you've fallen and you can't get up because, everyone hears the commercial. But that was the beginning of the last 4 years of our life, as I call it, the new normal. He was 58 years old, never been sick a day in his life, never been in the hospital. And on that day, he'd fallen and he could no longer walk. And he went to the emergency room at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, and we were there for 2 weeks and they could not diagnose him. And they indicated to us that they were going to send us home. And I was like, how are you sending us home and he can't walk? And they said, they'd done every test they could and they couldn't find the problem. So we had to advocate on our behalf. We actually had to call one of our congresspersons here to assist us in getting transferred and accepted at our teaching hospital here in the state of Florida, which is Shands in Gainesville. He was transferred to Shands. We were there for about 2 days and they came in and they spoke to me. And at the time, based upon all of the tests that they've done, they thought that he possibly could have Lou Gehrig's disease. And I was like, oh my God, Lou Gehrig's. And, that's not ever something you want to hear. But the next day they came in and they said it was not that, but he did have a very rare disease and only affects 1 in a million people. Called stiff person syndrome. And I'd never heard of stiff person syndrome. So of course I immediately went and started Googling it. And it is a very rare disease that affects a part of your body. Some people it affects their hands or their legs, but in my husband, it affected his trunk area, which means he could no longer sit up or bend or do any of those things on his own, which then could not facilitate him being able to get up or walk or do anything. We spent about 2 weeks there at Shands. Because the disease is so rare, there is no cure. And all of the treatments that they have for it is experimental. They put us on one experimental treatment, and the treatments are to keep the disease at the point that you um, are diagnosed. So at that time, he still had some mobility and could walk a little with a walker and assistance. And I said, okay, great, we can do this. We came home back to Tallahassee and he started working with a physical therapist. And in August of 2017, he was working with a physical therapist and the physical therapist broke his hip. And as a result of his hip being broken, he had a hip replacement, and then a month later, it got infected and they had to take the hip out. So we were in and out of the hospital on and off for months. They removed the hip, but because of his disease and no one here in Tallahassee could work with it, they would not put the hip back in. And they indicated to us that we would have to go to Shands, which we did. And we were there for 4 months. They were able to get a hip put back in. We came home and then we started on the process that we're on now. We've gone through 3 or 4 different experimental treatments, and every time you think you're getting used to your new normal, I was telling someone that, we had on this treatment this last year that we thought was making progress. And in September of this year, after doing this treatment for a year, he went to get the treatment and it caused him to flatline. And at that point, they indicated we could no longer get the treatment. So we are now at a crossroads. But my husband has such great faith, and he is such a man of God that he believes, and I believe that we're going to make it through with the help of God. And so it's been a hard 4 years, but every day he gets up, he has his praise and worship, and we just keep going.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you have shared stories with me from time to time. And I just want to take this time to say, in your sharing your story is never a doom and gloom. It's like one day at a time. I believe and I trust, and I thank you for sharing that with us. I was reading the other day, and it says, what does it take to be a good caregiver? And the response to that is that you cannot quantify that because it just depends on the situation at hand. What do you think about that statement?
I believe that there is no one magic pot in being a great caregiver. I was fortunate that our first nurse, my husband has nurses that come every day except Sunday to assist me with him because he's 95% bed bound. And our first nurse was excellent, and she had patience with me and she taught me things to do, but she also told him, that I've been with families where the families, send them to a home. So these are the people you're going to have to rely on. So I don't think that there's one size that fits all in terms of caregivers. I just think that you have to get up every day and try to put a smile on your face and do the best that you can do. And I think what helps me is that I see him every day fighting. And so that, if he can, and with everything that he's gone through, because when I think about my life changing, his entire life changed on an instant with no warning. And if he can get up every day and if he can keep going, then it should be very, very easy for me to keep going.
I also read in this same article, Laurice, it says these are the good traits of a good caregiver, and it listed about 5 of them. And I want you to tell me, pick a couple of them, tell me what has sustained you or have made you what you call a better caregiver. It talked about patience, compassion, humor, detail oriented, and being able to accept help from others. And so when you hear those 5, what are the ones that stick with you the most?
Well, I think I'm not very good at being able to accept help for others, so I will admit that. But I think that you have to have patience. And you also have to make sure, in terms of the detail, I mean, we've had a slew of physicians and nurses and medicines, and just keeping up with all of those types of things and making sure that you're the best advocate that you could have for your mate. I remember when we were in the hospital for 5 or 6 months, just seeing people who never had visitors there. And I just said I was going to make sure that through every step of the way that I was there, that I was advocating him, and that they knew that he had someone who cared. And so I think those are the things you have to do. And the thing that helps me, we've been married 25 years, is, and people always say it's interesting to me when people say, I'm so proud of you and what you're doing. And I say to myself, isn't this what I'm supposed to do? This is a vow I took, and as a wife. And so that's always interesting to me when I hear people say that. But I think that you just have to take it one day at a time, because every day there will be something new, something different. I never imagined myself as a caregiver at the time that I was 53, 54. And learning how to change a sheet with someone in the bed, learning how to give baths, and all of the things that you have to do on a daily basis. Even now, holiday seasons, our nurses, our last day for them to be here was Tuesday. So I'm here, I have to make sure all of those things are done and he's taken care of. So you just have to take it a day at a time.
Thank you for sharing that. One thing I do know about you, that you have a great support system with your family, your
Yes.
daughters, and all of that. And so, share with me, what do you do to care for you?
I think probably I'm thankful for my daughters, because they have just been wonderful. And, people who see us see that we are together a lot. They try to make sure that their mom is okay. And I think about every 5 to 6 weeks, we go somewhere for a weekend, or we'll go to the spa, or we'll do something together, just so that I could have that, day or two break, just to be someone taking care of me. And I think that that's important.
Okay. Well, all of those things are sound good. I think that it's good to hear someone that's just willing to share the highs and the lows. And we know again that when you're in a caregiver's position, that it's a disruption to your life. But like you said, but it's a life and a love that you commit to, and so
Yeah.
you don't see it as that. And so, as we close out this chat, what would be your bit of advice for someone who is a caregiver? So, maybe the best resources you have,
Mhm.
and to encourage them to also take, care for themselves as a caregiver.
Well, I think the number one thing that I would tell anybody is to just continue to pray and stay faithful. That's what's most important, because I did not realize it. My sister said she realized it, and my daughter said she realized it. But there was a total year that I went through that I didn't realize that how depressed I was, or how much all of this had affected me. But I think the fact that I am faithful and prayerful, that helped me get through it. The other advice that I would give is that I was a deer in headlights, as they say, because my husband took care of everything. And I'm just going to be honest. I went to the bank. I didn't even know how much my mortgage was. And I know that's crazy, but I
No?
never paid it. I never paid it. I
Yeah.
didn't know, and just fortunate that he worked for a company that they held my hand. I didn't know that he had disability insurance that took care, because I called them and I said, I don't know what we're going to do. His FMA has run out. And she's like, Ms. Thomas, you have long-term disability. And I was like, we do. So just familiarize yourself. You never expect it, but you never know. And while you're going through the medical things, having to learn about the other things in terms of taking care of the business of your home, if that happens, I think that everyone needs to have that checkup clinic beforehand, so that you're not trying to navigate your way through all of these things. Our youngest daughter was a week away from graduating high school when my husband got ill. And now she's getting ready to graduate for college. And I'm just thankful that at that point in time, she, being 18 years old, said, well, Mom, I'm going to stay here and go to school. And she has done everything that she can in terms of being here to help me and assist me with her dad. And I'm thankful to her for that. But the biggest thing I would say to caregivers is to make sure, or anybody, that you are aware of what's out there, because I'm just grateful that I had people who told me. So Tawanda worked at Social Security at the time, and she told me how to go about applying for Social Security, who I needed to talk to, all of those different things. So you just make sure that you're aware of all of the things that go on in your home, and that you have the resources and utilize those persons who can assist you.
Well, I thank you so much. I tell you what I gleaned from this conversation is, first of all, you got to have the love
Yes.
for the individual that you are caring for. Number one, you got to have faith and belief in God, and especially if you're partnering with someone that has that faith and belief as well.
Right.
And another very important part is being an advocate
Yes.
for the person that you are caring for,
Yes.
and using all the resources that are available to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laurice. As
Thank
always.
you. I've enjoyed this.
Yes, and so we will continue to lift John up in prayer, and you and your family as well. And I hope you have a great holiday season.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.
Well, I am happy again to have another member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated to share her story with me this evening. Welcome, Miss Alicia Buxton. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
And thank you again. We know that we are um, shining light on caregivers this month, and we realize that it is a non-stop job, and so we appreciate you taking the time to come and share your thoughts and your story with us. Ms. Buxton is a member of Ada Alpha Omega chapter in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and so we want to say hello and give a shout out to her chapter that shared her name with me as a caregiver. And so, Alicia, would you start off just giving us a summary of how you became a caregiver and where you are in continuing to be a caregiver?
Yes, thank you, Madam Regional Director, for allowing me to share my story. Well, I would say I became a caregiver because I became a mother for the second time. And that second time was during what they would consider a geriatric stage, where you get a certain age at your age, they always tell you, look out for things. Well, I became a caretaker to my daughter Ivy, right at the age of 3, I believe, because that's when she was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. She wasn't verbal for a very long time. We didn't know what it was going on. We just know that she wasn't verbal for a very long time. So she became on the autism spectrum. So from there, I became a caregiver to my daughter. I had to basically take her to a lot of her speech therapy and occupational therapy appointments, be there sometimes with her in the classroom at school, because of, with autism spectrum, there's a lot of communications that some of those children don't always understand and don't always grasp. So that's when I started becoming a caretaker.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And how old is Ivy now?
Now she is 9.5. I have to make sure I put that and a half on
And a
there.
half on there.
Yeah, she reminds me, even though her birthday is in a couple of days, she still says I have 9.5. So I have to put that 9.5 on there.
And I've shared before, I've started making sure I read about caregivers in preparation for this talk, although I do understand I had a sister who was a caregiver for our father for quite some time. But one of the questions I read is, what does it take to be a good caregiver? And it talked about the fact that that is something that you cannot actually define. It just depends on the situation. And so if someone would ask you that question, what does it take to be a good caregiver? How would you define that, or could you even define it?
I could define it in Ivy's situation. It takes patience. Um, it takes patience, it takes understanding. It takes understanding that you cannot correct the problem and understanding that it isn't really a problem. She's just different. The way that she learns is different. The way that she communicates is different. So understanding that is something that a caretaker would definitely need. Patience and understanding.
Right, that makes a lot of sense to really, really understand the situation. I
Mhm.
know that you have to make sure that you maximize the resources that you have and even be an advocate, for Ivy. How do you do that?
I did that basically. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have a lot of resources when it comes down to autism. And you use your resources when it comes to the school that she attends, any community outlets that are out there for autism kids. And then you have your church, you have your I have amazing chapter of Soros of Beta Alpha Omega. I love them. They gave me a lot of resources, kind of just to help and get Ivy comfortable with where she is and who she is and how she communicates. Now she has no problem telling you. She'll tell you everything. Before she went from being a nonverbal child to
Okay.
being a very, 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 very verbal child. So when she's talking and asking questions, I sometimes I find myself about to cry because I remember when she wasn't there, and
Mhm.
yeah,
Uh,
I get kind of whenever I'm talking about it.
I
So
can
yeah.
imagine so. I can imagine so. And so, also in my reading, it talked about good characteristics of a caregiver. And I know it goes
Mhm.
beyond this. I'm going to name about five that I remember. It says that, you already mentioned patience. It
Mhm.
also mentioned compassion, humor, that you have to be detail oriented and be able to receive help from others. And
Yeah.
so, um, if you had to talk on a few of those, which one would they be? Which ones would they be?
I think definitely being able to receive help. You can't do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone. I know that you're interviewing me, but I have a network of people who assist with Ivy. My husband, her dad, and then my oldest daughter, her sister. Now my children are 17 years apart, believe it or not. But and that comes in handy because my oldest daughter assists with her sister. So definitely having a network to lean on. I've already said patience. What was some of the other
Yeah, I mentioned compassion, I mentioned detail oriented, I mentioned humor.
yeah, humor and detail oriented. So there are sometimes when you have to have humor to get through, because you don't want to be a Debbie Downer all the time. So you try to and you want to make her feel that it's okay, that okay, you didn't get it this time, but okay, this is how we can get it the next time. So that helps out humor, and then being detail oriented, because with her, she is someone who is up for particular change in schedule. She doesn't like that. She didn't adjust well to that in the beginning. So it helps to be detailed when you can actually help her stay on her schedule by you staying on your schedule. So if you're detail oriented, then she's okay.
Okay, I love that. I love that. And I gotta believe that you gotta have some type of humor.
Oh,
So it's
yes.
Caregivers Month. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. We have that as one of our impact days. So here's the question: How do you care for yourself?
I at first I didn't see this as being a pampering type situation, but my pampering for myself is when I go to the hair salon every 2 weeks. Um, my hairstylist is basically my masseuse. She's massaging my head as she's washing it, and that gives me comfort. And it takes me away just for a couple of hours, so I'm taking care of my mental health. So I'm taking care of my mental health, my spiritual health. Yeah, that's my way of taking care of myself, I think.
Wonderful. Just so that you are intentional about giving yourself some time and not feeling guilty about that time. So, in
Yeah.
talking to you, I just want to kind of capture what you said in terms of making sure that you understand the situation that you're in. Make sure you educate yourself about, all of the things that are going on, not only with the person that you are a caregiver of, but also your surrounding, and how
Mhm.
important it is to have a great support system. That is something that got to has to bring you some uh, relief, and allowing the caregiver to be as independent as they can, in doing so. And so one last question: what would be some good advice that you would give a caregiver that also have a child like Ivy?
Um, I would say again, don't do it alone. You're not alone. Sometimes as being that Ivy is my child, it's like, what? You're a caretaker? You're a caretaker to your own child? You're supposed to take care of your child. Yes, that is true. You're supposed to take care of your child. But I'm going a little bit of the extra mile, I could say, being that I'm being not only her mother, but I'm being her teacher, her communicator, um, her comforter when she needs that comfort. And when I can't be there, then I have a support system. I'm not doing it alone. So make sure that you don't do it alone. That would be my biggest advice. Don't do it alone. Use your community, use your family, use your networking, use your schools. That's what they're there for. Use it, use all of it. So it doesn't take all of your energy, because if you burn out, then that's it. You burn out, she has nothing to go to. So I see it that way. I burn out, then what good am I to her?
Well, great.
So,
So many times, and I just want to wrap it up saying this, that when we even see the pictures and we're talking about caregivers, you never see the
mhm,
part that includes children.
right.
They see it as, the elderly, or someone who is physically handicapped, or of that nature. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We want to thank you for what you
Thank
do. And
you.
like you said, many times you don't want things. You're not looking for things because you're doing what a mother would do, or any loved one would do for someone they love. But please know that we'll support you. We're here, and hopefully that just you sharing your story will go a long way with our viewers in terms of what they are going through as a caregiver. And finally, just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to share. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the next person I have the honor of having a chat with this evening about care for the caregivers is Miss Cheryl Walker. Miss Walker is the president of Xi Beta Omega chapter in Griffin, Georgia. And so welcome, 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 Cheryl.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here tonight, and I'm always glad to share a story.
Well, and you have a story to share, and many of us that follow you on social media, we find a lot of joy in hearing about your story. But just give us a quick summary on the journey to becoming a caregiver.
Okay, my mother, actually, my mother found out she had dementia. She told us she thought she had it. And so we were proactive in everything we had to do. We got her a caregiver, we got her sitters, we took her to the doctor, but it was really amazing because she was so vibrant, and then all of a sudden she wasn't. And so I have my dad now. She died in 2016. I have my dad now, and I'm seeing about him. He's cognitively sound. He's 89 years old, but his sight is failing. And so I have had to see about both of them. Um, we were proactive. They were proactive. Actually, they both have nursing home insurance. We had power of attorney, wills, and everything. So I'm happy for that. But just to see them decline, I had to find some way to deal with it. So if you've been following me on social media, you know they're the teenagers, and that's how I talk about them.
Yes, you do. We had never heard that terminology. And so some of us look forward to it. I think that one of the things that I realized about a caregiver, but that there is no typical day when it comes to seeing about a caregiver. And just realizing that, so you went from, making sure along with your mother, making sure your mother was taken care of, to also becoming a caregiver for your dad. And so what does that model look like?
All right, for my mother, we had a person to come in at 7, get her up, and she had a routine. She never had sundowners, which was a good thing. And then this lady stayed from 7 to 2, and then somebody from 2 to 9. And so he could get out, and I could get out, but we were in and out of the house all day. With my dad, after my mom died, he didn't want me to move in with him. So he's 89. His sight is declining, and I just check on him every day. So I take him, of course, I take him everywhere. But he's getting along just fine. So that's what it looks like for me. But no day is alike. Like today, I told him I had an interview, and he waited until the absolute last minute to tell me what he wanted to eat. So, and then some days he'll say, "Well, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything." So, from day to day, you never know, but you have to be prepared and willing to meet it with joy. I consider it a labor of love. I really do, because they have done so much for me. So I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
So that's a word you brought in that I have not had a discussion with other members that I've had this chat with, is the word joy, and I know that my pastor talks about it a lot, about what joy is and what happiness is. And joy is about what you have deep within. It's not about the circumstances. And so that takes me to another part, and I share with others when we're talking about characteristics of a good caregiver. And some of those, listing a few, we're talking about you have to be detail oriented. You have to be compassionate. You have to have patience. You have to be able to accept help from others. But the last one, it says that you have to have a sense of humor. That's where I think about you all the time, Cheryl, in some of the stories uh, and real stories
Real
that you share. But I noticed that you have those characteristics, those other ones, but humor stand out. How do you make that just happen every day such that you can give us a dialogue between you and your dad?
Well, it could be a sad thing, because my dad was a fixer. We could go to him and he would fix it. And he's not able to fix it like he used to. And I just decided either we can be sad about it or we can laugh about it. And that's sort of his attitude. I think I have his personality. We just laugh about it. Those things, we were trying to figure out the other day what he wanted on his grocery list. He said, "Well, just order it, and we have to go back, we'll go back." So he's fun. My dad is like that. And
Yeah.
he has always taught us, just don't dwell on the bad. Even when my mom died, he said, we'll be sad, but the good thing is we have done everything God told us to do. And so we can be happy and rejoice. My mom died on her birthday. He said, your mama was a good girl. She liked to have a good time. So we know she's having a birthday party. So he was joyful and I am joyful, and we know where she is. And so I think I take it from them. I watched them take care of their parents. My mom my grandmom was in the nursing home for 19 and a half years. My mom went every day. And if she could not go every day, she had a posse of friends who would go. So somebody saw my grandmother every day. When my other grandmother got sick, my dad went every weekend to see her. But they never complained about it. Ever, ever. It was always a sense of joy. Come on, ride with me. Let's go see your grandmom, that sort of thing. So that's where I got it.
Well, I tell you, and you do it very well, very, very well. And we know that caregivers' responsibility is not easy. I think you do a great job of, meeting your dad where he is, and allowing him, to be as self-sufficient as he can be. Talk about the resources that you use, and the advocating that you do for your dad.
Okay. For my dad, for the most part, when he can go into a doctor's office and tell the doctor exactly what they need to hear. I will walk in for him. In fact, one doctor's office during COVID, uh, we walked in and the lady said, well, you can't go in unless he's not cognitively sound. And so I said, well, he's not. And when we got around the corner, he said, did you tell that lady I was crazy? I said, no. He said, I'm calling your brother because you told me. So he's able to handle his business. With my mother, we talked to her doctor and we got hospice care, even though she was not dying, but all the palliative care. And so we could have somebody to check on her. So we found those resources, and we were just very lucky to find sitters who would come in as well. So,
That is.
but you need, if you can find resources, use those resources. Don't be afraid. Sometimes we're afraid to use it. Use the resources. Use those resources. And the other thing is use the respite care if you can, because you need to take care of yourself. I found out you can't take care of anyone else if you aren't taking care of yourself. So get away. Sometimes I get away. I even have a friend who will call and say, okay, it's time for you to go somewhere. You just need to get away. He'll be okay. His friends will check on him. And so we've got to know when it's time to step away and take a minute, to yourself.
So you kind of took my other questions. What do you do? We call it care for the caregivers. And what do you do to care for yourself? And we see that that happens, and that is absolutely great. Talk about your support system. I just heard you say his friends will make sure, that he's okay. So how does that support system look?
It's perfect. He has a group of about 5 friends, and they meet twice a month to play cards. So I can go out with the girls. But the good thing about my dad is he will stay there. We have a pact. He won't cook anything unless he's sitting in the kitchen. He'll use the microwave. So I can get away and go out with the girls, or go out to a concert or whatever. And I feel good knowing someone will check in on him. He has a lot of friends, and our church is perfect. we have a good group of people at church who we check on each other.
So Cheryl, in previous conversations, we talked about how you've lived through a model of caregiving, and so that's what have you in a good place in terms of being a caregiver and how blessed you are. And so we are thankful for getting that perspective from you. And those of us that may not have served as a caregiver realize how important it is to have conversation about preparation as we move to this point. It doesn't mean that your loved ones will not need you as a caregiver, but there are still parts that can be taken care of before you get to that point. So this has been a great conversation. I always love having a conversation with you, and we're going to make sure that we put that word that you have, in terms of what you call them. What do you call your father again?
Teenager. He's a teenager.
Okay.
Actually, he's the deputy teenager.
Oh, wow. And so we'll put that up there. And so thank you again. Hope you enjoy a great holiday season. And I appreciate your leadership in Xi Beta Omega chapter.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you to each of our special guests tonight. Although caregiving is emotionally, mentally, and physically demanding at times, it can be one of the most rewarding experiences in your life. But let's remember, there still must be time for you. For the Record is meant to be exciting, engaging, inspiring, and informational. And I hope that you feel that way after viewing each episode that we broadcast. So, what will we have next month? I am so glad you asked. We will host a virtual Christmas celebration on For the Record. We will celebrate through music, talent, games, stories, and etc. So please help us spread the word that we are live on For the Record once a month. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Back to you, Sharmika.
Thank you, Madam Regional Director. Thank you, SOARs, for joining us tonight. And we will see you on our next episode of For the Record. We hope you enjoy your holiday season. Thank you.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, 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 I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand When the night has come and the land is dark,